what does the life cycle of a proper penetration test actually look like?
Well, I would say that a proper penetration test, the life cycle actually starts before you identify who's going to be performing the pen test for you. Um, you have to, the first part of the pen test is really the scoping piece. This starts out at home, if you will, in your office, determining why do you need to pen test, what areas do you need to have pen tested, and what methodology or what approach do you want to have that pen test performed utilizing, right? So that sets your expectations for what you want to get out of the pen test, and that it gives you the ability when you are talking to potential providers to say, this is what I want, versus I just want a pen test and I leave it up to you to define that in your own head and then just do it for me, right? So the scoping piece is the beginning, and then once that's been defined for the client internally, they then reach up to a penetration testing organization and say, hey, we want to have a pen test. This is our expectation. This is what we want. And then pass that on to the provider, right? So then the provider would then look at what the client is asking for. They would define their own scope, get back with the client, say, these are the things that we're going to perform. Here's how we're going to perform them. This is the methodology we're going to use. And this is how long it's going to take us to perform those tests. Once that's done, they step into the recon phase, or the enumeration phase, where they're just exploring the client's network or application, depending on the type of test that it is. Once they've done the exploration phase and they've pretty much mapped out what it looks like, depending upon the type of test, they'll either step into a more defined enumeration, where they're determining what the workflow looks like, if it's a web application, or identifying any other underlying aspects of the network, the type of authentication mechanisms that are being used, etc. Then identify any potential avenues of attack, perform exploitation with the approval of the client. Once the exploitation is performed and they've gained the access, they would then, depending upon the scoping that was defined before, step into a post-exploitation phase, where they're either just recording what they did and reporting that back to the client, or taking that next step to show how much potential damage could have occurred had this been a malicious exploitation versus just a regular exploitation. Once that phase is done, then they would go into the reporting phase, where they're going to draft up the report. They should give you an executive summary that makes things simple for your C-suite to understand, and then give you a more technical one that allows for the people that are going to do the fixes to know exactly where they need to go to make those fixes. Once those fixes are made, they then reach back out to you again and say, hey, we've got it fixed. Your provider should then reach out to you and say, well, how did you fix them? Record that information, and then do an analysis internally rather quickly, just to make sure that what you're suggesting the fixes are actually would fix it, and then that there was no confusion with what the actual exploitation risk was, and then perform a test on those findings to make sure that they were actually mitigated.